So I think the first one, with what Bhante was talking about recently with meditation as another, looking for entertainment in it, or looking for another way to get away from the neutral.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how does one make that switch, or how do they get to the point where they want to switch from chasing the peaks and the valleys, chasing the peaks and escaping the valleys, and seek the neutral feeling? At some point there's like a giving up or something that happens that you actually want to stop and like make that switch to settle and seek the neutral. So that's, how does that switch happen? And yeah, that's the question.
Well, I think dukkha, the word that comes to mind immediately is dukkha, which is the Pali word for suffering, dissatisfaction, not being happy, things not being good enough. You know, this thorn in your finger or somewhere in your system that's causing pain. What I've learned through the practice is that nothing in the Dhamma is done by force. Nothing is to be achieved through imposing something or pushing against something. Think in terms of a recipe. If when we say a recipe, that means we have a blueprint. We have a guidebook or instructions. Okay, you use this ingredient, how much this ingredient, and how much. You mix them together, and then do this, and then do that, and then put in the oven or on the stove, and wait this many minutes, and then you have the. So I think one of the hindrances in the practice is complicating things. The mind likes to make things complex and too complicated. Yeah, I can think of another word. But really, it's very simple. Not easy, usually, that's what we hear. But the Dhamma, the practice is very simple. If only we stick to the instructions, we follow, we trustingly undertake the step-by-step process, naturally things will fall in place. Naturally, the mind will no longer be pulled into the highs and the lows, and it will acclimate to the middle. If we were to think in terms of pendulum, instead of the two extremes, we come to that midpoint of less movement. And you will see the manifestation of this in your life. A practitioner will see this in their lives when as they practice and apply the technique and use the information of the Dhamma, they will not enjoy movement so much, whether it's physical movement and especially mental movement in the form of social interactions or being in quiet places versus noisy places. Listening to coarse sounds versus soft sounds. So it's a natural, again, what I'm trying to capture is this natural flow of how, when we truthfully, genuinely, honestly practice the path, the results will follow. And for me, experientially, it's always about being sick and getting the cure, the medicine. You know, the Dhamma, when our teacher says the Dhamma is not, or meditation is not entertainment, it's a reminder that we're talking here about pain relief. You know, when someone is very sick and they're in pain, they don't look for entertainment. They're looking for the cure, for the medicine. The Dhamma is the medicine. And this is where, paradoxically, the pain is a blessing. Someone who is in pain and has the clarity of vision to be aware of that and look for the remedy is a privileged person. having the guidelines, the instruction book of the Dhamma, which I don't think of as a religion or for me it's the bare bones of it is truthful information. It's the right information. And it's amazing because when you have the right information, that's it. It's like you have the map to the treasure house, and you have legs, and you can walk, and you have signposts, and you have people who have gone, who have reached the destination, and others walking with you if you're lucky. Amazing. Versus most people in the world today who could be seen as like driftwood, drifting where the wind blows, and not having purpose or not having sense of direction, destination. So to come back to your question, I would say it's a matter of diligently applying the practice, the technique, the method. And we know that when we're talking about Buddhism, we're talking about the 3 trainings. The refinement in our virtue. What kind of a person are you, basically? And for that, Lord Buddha gives us clear principles, clear compass. This is how you chisel, this is how you polish yourself again and again to create a beautiful character every moment of your life, through your actions, through your thoughts, through your words, and through your physical actions. As you do that, you're cultivating the mind, because when the Buddha says cultivate the mind, the implication is that the mind is not cultivated. It's like soil that's rough, coarse, unusable. It's not nourished, it's neglected. And we've all seen soil that's barren almost. So cultivate your land, basically, your mind. Exactly. And we have the clear instructions on how to do it. It's not just an invitation, it's a clear process with guidelines, instructions. And as you do that, your eyes become clearer and clearer. The vision, how you see yourself, your reality, and you become your own doctor. You become your own healer. And so as we undertake those 3 trainings, they naturally pull us back from the extremes of the pendulum and take us to the middle, the neutral. And it will manifest in our lives, again, by our conduct, who we associate with, our choices and decisions.
See the evidence.
Yeah, that's how I would approach that question.
What about people who say things in general in life and in the practice and on the path that for most people things work but not for me? So like things never work for me generally in life or in the practice too.
So what I hear you say is that people who have resistance, like this is not for me?
Yeah, no, it feels like things just never really work how they want, or like in life they just never find happiness, or things don't work out, and that creeps into the practice too. Like there's still like an idea that you're supposed to be happy all the time, or like experiencing what you want all the time, basically.
It sounds like a calcified pattern of chronically self-sabotaging your, success or health through this again, the image comes to me as a calcified mentality. This is how it is, and it never works for me. These are just, things we pick up through life, perceptions, assumptions, biases, conclusions. Most of it is garbage, in the sense that it is so detached from reality, from what might in fact surround our world. But this reminds us that the world, in terms of the Dhamma, is not what the world is to the public in general. When we say the world, we mean the six sense gates, the six sense doors, the spheres, Lord Buddha calls them. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin, and the mind. These are the channels through which the world is happening. So it's not something out there or the world, outside of, no, that's not the world. And this is where empowerment happens, because if the world is not over there, it's over here, this interactional, the experiential world through the eyes, through the ears, then the next natural, logical question is, what's the content of my world? So what's coming in? There is a reason why Lord Buddha calls them doors. A door is a barrier, but it also has a handle. It's not an open hole. It's a closure. It's a boundary in a sense, right? We lock the door when we go to bed at night. We open the door. We open it to people we want to come in, and we close it to people or things or bugs and whatever, wind, rain, things that are desirable or undesirable. So we protect ourselves. So that's the world, Imagine a guard in front of those doors, and so, which implies that we have agency, we have responsibility. We can't just say, oh, the world, no. We are at the gate of the world, and we are the gatekeepers. So what are we letting in, and what are we keeping out? This means there is this constant process of choosing, decision making. And it's all intertwined in the Dhamma, It ties into Sila, the training in virtue, because we need to know what to let in and what to keep away. And we need to be mindful to be able to do that, to see what's coming in. So Sati and Sila, they work together beautifully. Nothing is separate. Nothing stands by itself. Nothing is. It's all relationships. So someone who is overtaken by negativity, the Dhamma comes and gives that person the uplifting information, in the sense that you are the creator of your world through perceptions and thoughts, your story, what you expose, what food you give to your eyes. Now, it's not just the stomach that we feed the eyes, we feed the ears, the tongue, the nose, the skin, and especially the mind. So that calcification of that mentality of, it never works for me, you see how that is a vicious cycle, That type of energy will attract more of that into one's world. So unless they, again, dukkha could be the savior in situations like that, I think, too, and in the sense that it can shock the person into wakefulness, as to the way they are creating their own pain, the causes of their own suffering. And another thing that comes to mind is, again, the Buddha says one of the rarities is to come across a person who is grateful. So someone engulfed in negativity is a person who has forgotten the power of gratitude, or the need, or the vitality of appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So that person, if they were only to start from small steps, it doesn't have to be big, just noticing things that are going well or going okay in their lives, just a little bit. We know that staying with a thought for 17 seconds, because thoughts are magnetic, will pull to itself another thought of the same vibration. And then after, if you could just stay with that thought for half a minute, another thought will come magnetically, and boom, boom, boom. Before you know it, it's gathering momentum, and you're remembering things that are positive. You're suddenly hopeful. Suddenly you catch yourself being so inaccurate when you say, I never, the always, those categorical absolutes, they're never true. You see the exceptions, you see the holes in those black and white ways of seeing your life, and suddenly things begin to crack, and there's an opening. So gratitude.
The average person who's practicing as a layperson, the practice could be something that they have at the end of the day or at a specific time during the day, and it's good and helps and everything. But how do they take it to the next deeper level, or like just to go deeper in the practice? Like what's the turning point that will take you deeper into the practice from just being something that you do sometimes? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hunger. When you're hungry or thirsty or sleepy and basically experiencing any essential vital need, you don't sit down and intellectualize. So what's the best way to, there is a need and there is this drive to fulfill it. With the practice, again, I think that pushing momentum, the drive, with dukkha is that drive. A person who thinks that they're very healthy will not go to the doctor, or will not research, will not seek or investigate, look for the right information, the remedy. So the first noble truth, which is the sense of being dissatisfied, and really seeing that, understanding that, at least intuitively, viscerally, not intellectually. For some of us, we come to the Dhamma through very almost this visceral push that we're not even aware of. There is great suffering, and there is this momentum to extinguish that fire, basically. And if we have good merits and trust in the heart, we find the right teaching, we find the right teacher. And then it's a natural process of self-healing. And when we do the practice, it naturally seeps into every facet of our life. It's not a separate compartment. When you practice virtue, where do you practice it? Not in the bathroom, not in the kitchen, not in the living room necessarily alone. You take it to the world, to relationships, people. Your interactions will be colored by virtue. So that's part of the practice. It's not just sitting meditation. People sometimes confuse that, oh yeah, when I sit, that's when I'm practicing the Dhamma. No. The Noble Eightfold Path has 8 points, and right mindfulness is, if we were to see that as the sitting practice, but it seeps through every part of it. Your thinking, your speech, your intentions, your effort, your actions, livelihood, how you create a livelihood, what you pay attention to. So, again, the sense organs, they are working 24/7, they never take a break. And if the light of mindfulness is constantly being trained to keep an eye on those 6 and choose wisely while cultivating the soil of the mind, then naturally there is wisdom that grows, and there's no need to no one then needs to force or push us to practice. It's a self-driven. It's a choice. It's a decision. It's life. It's no longer, oh yeah, I do this and then I also do meditation. No, it becomes your life. Because again, if the person is practicing diligently, consistently, persistently, the fruits are immediate. And you begin to have this playful, lovely drive to fan the fires of your practice more and more. Because you begin to feel relief. The relationships become more beautiful. There is less strife, there's less pushing, there's less pulling. You're more content with the present, and you're more loving to yourself, because you begin to see how rare it is to find a virtuous person who is content and who works on themselves versus on others. Because that's a very easy, common mistake that we make, being pulled or putting ourselves out there in the world and trying to influence people, change this or change that. And but the Dhamma teaches us that the best way to change the world is, again, the world has to be redefined in the Dhamma. It's the 6 senses, that's the world. Then it's beautiful, you have so much to work with. You have all the 6 senses to work with. Keeping the guard and watching what happens. And people, the happier you become, the happier your surroundings. You don't even need to say a word. You can be a mute person, a happy mute. And everyone is happy, even the leaves, the plants, the flowers, the birds. Everything will feel your vibration and everything will be uplifted. Not a single word. If it comes naturally, wonderful, beautiful. If you know something someone needs, you share that, beautiful. But not from a place of tension and anger or strife, but from a place of this natural, like a fountain that flows. Or as they say, a river that flows towards the ocean. It doesn't go halfway and say, okay, I think I'm going to turn back. It goes. You can't stop it, so it's a natural flow.
So, if you learn all about Buddhism, you learn about the jhanas and the attainments and all of these things that can be kind of shiny and like attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So if the goal isn't to purely just get some attainment or new success or new thing, then what's the proper way to form the goal or to see the direction?
These days we're very intellectual. I think it's a general state of being that I think is in this time and age we've been conditioned to be very, very heady, very intellectual, conceptual. So oftentimes we hear words, a bundle of words, but then we're so cut off from the feeling aspect that so I think what I'm trying to say is let's come back to the feeling aspect. And how do you feel? That's a good question to ask. As far as the goal of the practice, again, I think of it as information. You know, the Dhamma gives us a comprehensive, complete guidebook on how to be happy. So being happy would be the goal. But being happy in a very specific way, being happy unconditionally. Because we know that we discovered through the practice that what we call happiness usually is actually an experience of fleeting moments of pleasure. And if hopefully we experience true joy and happiness internally created, they also don't last, like the jhanas, these very beautiful states of being that we can generate within ourselves through following certain steps of the practice of meditation and being soft and allowing while pursuing the training. They also don't last. So the transitoriness of it leaves us feeling so it's not good. This is not satisfying. I'm not happy. We want something that lasts. So what ultimately we're seeking is a permanent state of happiness. And in Buddhism, that's nibbana, the term that is used to capture that state of unconditional, permanent joy that is not dependent on outside conditions, what someone said to you, how they treated you, what you have, how old are you, whether you're young or old, sick or healthy, regardless of those factors. Imagine a happiness that's regardless of those things that we equate with happiness. Of course, the body will age, will have aches and pains, the aging process, just like an apple, cute little green apple on the tree. And then a few weeks later or so, it's Eightfold Path, which no matter what life experience you're going through, no matter what no matter what your world involves, it will always fall within the Noble Eightfold Path. So this is really beautiful. This is so healing, so wonderful that one who is truly applying the Dhamma is never lost, is never confused, is never in a state of fog or not even searching, because if you have found a true, complete, noble Eightfold Path, which includes right view, with clear instructions as to what that means, right intention, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right, concentration or samadhi. So the whole point is to have all 8 aligned. So if something is not right in your life, you can always bring the blueprint and say, okay, so where is the problem here? Is my livelihood wholesome? Am I making money through a wholesome means? Am I harming someone? Okay, no, okay. Is my effort wholesome? Where is my energy going? Where is my time going? What am I paying attention to? So you analyze with the guidelines, and before you know it, you're your own doctor. You no longer need to rely fully on the doctor until you can say, I'm completely healed from the disease of ignorance. which is what we're treating. But again, to go back to your question, to be happy unconditionally. And
so instead of having a big goal of something like that final healings or that finally cured stage, to focus on now, like what needs to be done now, like day to day, to take each step in healing and take care of what needs in the moment.
yes, and be happy now. I mean, it's not, again, some intellectual future-oriented right now. That's why the First Noble Truth is so key, to be able to detect in us the state of, not being content. And you don't need to really spend hours and hours over this, because life necessarily involves loss. We will lose people, we will lose relationships, possessions, but above all, our emotions, our feelings are fleeting. If that alone is enough to hopefully push someone to really want to understand, why am I happy one moment and then not so happy the next? I was feeling pretty well, and then boom, this thing happened. I read this email, and now the whole day is, what happened? How? Where did that happiness go? So it's very personal. It's very individual, in the sense that the person really is in pain and is looking for the cure. And no one can do that for us or bring us to that state of awareness.
So it seems to all come back to having the right cure and understanding it.
Yeah, having a sense of direction in life and not being, not having the courage to ask the deep questions, and just witnessing the changes that your body goes through, how we grow and age. And we know we'll die. Yes, we say we know we'll die, but do we really? It's really interesting how I'm discovering that and in the suttas, when we read about countless lay people at the time of the Buddha who attained these supreme states of health, a lot of them were very much in suffering. And Lord Buddha uses the image of one's hair being on fire or the house being on fire to capture the dukkha that we're always... but even if we were to go back to the six senses, in the suttas we have the fire sermon where the Buddha says the eyes are burning, the ears are burning, the nose is burning, the tongue is burning, the skin is burning, the mind is burning. What does he mean when he says? And one way to see that is the thirst, the tanha on every sense door that's burning, insatiated, wanting more and more and more, because it's never... It's like, imagine, today in the world we live in a state of, if you were to talk about nutrition and diet, nutritionists have come up with this term, high caloric malnutrition. So we're overfed, but we're malnourished. We're eating a lot of food as a public, as a culture, the wrong foods. So calories are there, but there's no nutrition. So the body has energy to survive, but it's dying basically. It's building blocks are not being provided for it to constantly regenerate itself. that could be used as an analogy for the fire, the tanha, because you're constantly wanting to enjoy everything, enjoy what you eat, enjoy what you see, what you hear, but it's so conditional and so fluid that it's always dependent on so many other factors that are dependent in turn on other factors. So you're constantly finding yourself not there. So then there is this thirst of unfulfillment. And that's the second noble truth. The cause of dukkha is this yearning and sense of not being satiated. It's like we eat and we're not nourished. We eat and we're not nourished. But again, I think I'm going into a more deeper principles of the Dhamma, where the six senses are what we take as mine. That's the root, the default unconscious identifications that we have, and it's a non-stop process of trying to be in control, and we're not. But again, this sounds intellectual. What is required of us is to cultivate the mind, really restrain and train the mind to begin to see how the eyes work, how the ears work, what makes the eyes move, and how does the attention move. The attention usually moves where the eyes move. And suddenly you hear a sound, attention now is there. And now I see the leaves moving, attention is there. And there is a thought that came up, attention is there. It's a constant state of movement. But the one way to define health in terms of the Dhamma is non-movement. Like I'll say this and I'll conclude. In one of the suttas, Lord Buddha, I think, is conversing with Venerable Ananda, and Venerable Ananda lists 7 great qualities of the Buddha, or 7 great thoughts of a noble one. 7, and Lord Buddha adds the 8th, and he says, the great thoughts of a great man. An 8th one, Ananda, would be the fact that he does not delight in papancha, the proliferation of thoughts. He delights in nipapancha, no proliferation of thoughts. So there's stillness and quiet, and that's the state we're working to create in ourselves.